Moving right along, students, we are already up to chapter 24, Impressionism, a 19th century painting movement. And here we have another painting by the artist we just saw, which represented more realism. This is truly Impressionism. Manet, in case you didn't make the transition. Bar at the Folies Bergère on page 432 in your textbook. The Folies Bergère in Paris was a hot spot. I've actually been there myself. It was outrageous. It was high society, in fact, in its day, in its time. A lot of dancing girls in Las Vegas-like costumes, partially clad, would come down, and chandeliers and so on. And so it was quite a place. Anyway, Impressionism and the Impressionist art is primarily painted out of doors, but obviously not necessarily so. We're inside the Folies Bergère. But the primary subject of Impressionist paintings was light and the effects of light. That is no coincidence because physics and the color wheel were being invented. That's in the background, science in the background of this particular time period and when these paintings were being created. Notice the simplification of and flatness in some cases, even though there are highlights placed here and there. There's no major attempt to make this look like it's real, like it's three-dimensional, in ways that we certainly saw in most of the other styles that we looked at up until this point. The chandelier is simplified to a bunch of strokes of color. Now, one of the things that helped this movement along is that for the first time, paints were available, oil paints were available in tube form. So artists didn't have to spend so much time, or their assistants, mixing up the paints and whatever. They could take these paints in a box out into the forest with them and paint up a storm, or in the studio, or whatever. So that was a real advantage. They also didn't really think they needed to have, as on the Jacques Louis David, it was just, you couldn't see a brushstroke there. It was like, when you see it, it's like just painting on glass. But now we have some texture on the surface, and we have simplification all over the place of form. And here we see, and this is an interesting painting, because it bothers me a little bit, but you know, who am I to judge Manet of all things? But this is theoretically supposed to be the back of this person here, the reflection in the mirror, and somehow the positioning of it just doesn't work for me in that regard. But nonetheless, it is a strikingly beautiful painting and certainly shows economy as one of the elements there in terms of the simplification. Look at the people in the background there. Just slashes and dashes of color to show us, you know, human figures in the background. Page 432 in your textbook. Like many painting styles, and I mentioned before, the titles for these start out in a negative way. Certainly this is an example of that. Impressionism, which is for many people in today's world, when I ask students what's your favorite style of art, if I get one from anybody, I typically get Impressionism. Well, it wasn't so at the time that Impressionism in the late 19th century, well, yeah, mid to late 19th century, was the style that was being popularized. People saw it as paintings by people that didn't really know how to paint because it was so simplified. Remember I told you that the main theme inspiring these artists was color and the effect of color because of sunlight. And this is the painting that started the title for this movement, Impressionism. It was reviewed, and it was the title of the painting. It's by Monet, M-O-N-E-T, and I want to warn you right now, you have to be careful not to get your Monets mixed up with your Manets, because it's easy to do. M-O-N-E-T, not M-A-N-E-T. This Claude Monet painting is Impression Sunrise, and from that, a reviewer, the critic, said it's nothing but an impression, meaning it in a very derogatory way. It's certainly not my favorite Impressionist painting, but it is the one famous for starting this movement and giving it its name. The Impressionists were an interesting group in that they banded together and painted together and went out to bars together and conversed and theorized and so on. And they certainly are an important part of everything we know about art history. So Monet is not necessarily famous for his sunrises nearly as much as he is for the next paintings that I'm going to give you a chance to see in just a moment. When we think about economy, abstraction, the simplification of form, we certainly can think about Monet and his water lilies. He painted them over and over again. He thought that the lily pond was just the whole universe. You could see the sky reflected in it, you could see up from the bottom, and in between there we had beautiful flowers and textures and ripples in water and whatever. He actually built a beautiful pond, lily pond, and other gardens at his home outside of Paris, Giverny. And I've had the chance to go there once 2 springs ago, and it was perfect timing just after graduation, and the flowers there couldn't have been more profuse or more beautiful. And it's a very exciting, it was a very exciting experience for me to be there. It's been on my bucket list for a long time. Nymphos, that's French for water lilies, and as I mentioned, he painted lots and lots of them, and they're quite large, needless to say. One of the things that helped with his success in painting like this is he had a serious situation with cataracts, and so his vision was quite blurred, and colors are changed when you have cataracts. I should know because I had them myself and had them removed, and couldn't believe how the colors had changed just almost instantly after my surgeries for that. This is one of many, I think. I'm not going to pause. I'm going to go and show you another. Well, here's one thing I'm going to show you. This is the studio at Giverny, in which Monet painted many of these. And in this case, they were all hooked together in a big circle so that you could stand literally in the middle of them and admire them. You can see them at a gallery, Lingerie in Paris. And it's quite wonderful to be able to see them the way he intended them to be seen. And now this studio that we're in here, or he's in, is a pretty wonderful gift shop there at Giverny on the outskirts of Paris. Let me see what else. I'm going to show you some more of his work. One of the things that he did was to set several canvases up, and he would paint for a while on one until the light got changed or different enough to have different colors and different feelings and effects on the surface. So he'd move over to the next canvas, move over to the next canvas. This is one of those images. And so this is the same. He probably didn't move very much whatsoever. It was a time of day. Of course, the canvases had to be a little bit separate. Here's another view of that. And here's yet another one. All from the same Rouen Cathedral in France, R-O-U-E-N, I hope. Yep, R-O-U-E-N. Let's not think that all the Impressionists were men. Not all artists were men. Every once in a while, we pay tribute to one of the women in art history. Certainly this one, Mary Cassatt, C-A-S-S-A-T-T. The title of this painting is The Voting Party. It's on page 436 in your textbook. It's a really beautiful composition. It's so strong and graphic, quite unusual in terms of things that we've seen, typically from much farther away. Mary Cassatt's real gift to art history is that she was an American from a wealthy family, from the railroad industry, who studied abroad and was fortunate enough to be able to do that, a luxurious education. And she hung out with a lot of the Impressionists. And she was even friends with Degas, who, in terms of art history, we know was kind of a crabby old man and didn't like to socialize very much. But somehow they were acquaintances as well as friends. Mary Cassatt's theme is typically mother and child, and this is no exception to that in this painting from your textbook on page 436. There is another, also in your textbook on page 437, frequently confused with Mary Cassatt, but this is Berthe Morisot, M-O-R-I-S-O-T. Berthe Morisot had also as a theme mother and child, and this beautiful painting of a mother adoring her sleeping baby is certainly a crowd pleaser and one of my favorite Impressionist paintings. There is a simplification and just enough information there to know what it is and to understand it, and it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. Okay, you'll not find this image in your book, unfortunately, not this book, but I wanted to show you this. When you see Impressionist paintings that involve ballet dancers, if you're on a game show or whatever, always go with Degas, D-E-G-A-S, Edgar Degas. He loved the ballet, he loved painting ballerinas and dancers and directors of dance and so on. And I showed this painting because of its composition primarily. Because, first of all, we talked about, in the early classes, we talked about visual equilibrium when we take a look at a painting. So right here we have a lot of visual attention. It's a diagonal line going up into the picture plane. And so we've got a lot of stuff going on here. Without that watering can on the left-hand side, if you can imagine that not being there, it would probably become imbalanced. You see his signature actually is just above the watering can, Degas. So imagine, if you will. Now, as a young art student, I remember thinking like, well, that's really was interesting that he did that, but I mean, what the heck? The art history teacher I had didn't explain to me, and I'm going to explain to you, in case you don't know what that's about. Probably means you never studied ballet. By the way, I never did, but my mother did. And to find out that there's talc, powder in those cans that help the ballet slippers move on the floor and so on. So it has its purpose, so it's not just a random thing placed there to balance the painting out. But it's certainly a beautiful painting. And Edgar Degas was a fantastic painter. In your textbook, you will find a Degas painting on page 435 that I don't have an image of, Dancer with the Bouquet, page 435, Degas. Although Laurie Schneider-Adams did not put this beautiful painting in her book, I think I would be cheating you without showing it to you, because it's likely this one that you can really see live and in person for yourself. Stand in front of her, enjoy the colors in particular. Girl with the Watering Can by the French artist Renoir, R-E-N-O-I-R. It happens to be at the National Gallery in Washington, D.C. It is a crowd pleaser. Notice the economy, the simplicity, the vibrancy of the colors in this Girl with the Watering Can. When you see it, you will probably not be standing there alone. Well, you can't see it now until the gallery reopens, but at some point, hopefully you will. I'd like for you to see that. I'd also like for you, while you're in Washington, D.C., to check out this particular painting. It's at a very small gallery, best to get a taxi to get there. It's in a neighborhood in the Phillips Gallery. Luncheon of the Boating Party is the title of this very vibrant, very beautiful painting. And it's a must-see if you ever get a chance. And really, it is such a great example of the beauty of this style called Impressionism. It's no wonder people love it today. It's interesting to know that it had a hard time becoming popularized. But we can't really appreciate art at the time in which, so often, at the time in which it's being created, because artists are oftentimes more futuristic, more than we understand, and it takes a while for us to come around to say, oh, I get that. I know this, I feel this every time I get a new art magazine and I look at them, really? But you know, all we know is now. Anyway, I am concluding my mini lessons here on chapter 24 for now. I'll be back in a couple of days to wind this up, because I think what I want to do next is to go into post-impressionism in chapter 25 as things really start to take off and become modern. All right, so give me a couple of days and I'll be back. I hope you will be too.